So here we go then. The start of a brand new sailing adventure. SailGP is up and running down under.
Speed is the king, and they absolutely own the first start here.
What a sight. 6 boats sweeping across Sydney Harbour.
Commanding performance here by the Japanese.
Goodness, how close that is.
Check how far behind the Australians are.
Okay, let's sort ourselves out here, guys.
Race 1 of SailGP in Sydney, won by the Japanese.
It's a good step in the right direction, and we're stoked with the result, and we're looking forward to 2 more races today.
As they hit the start line, it is Japan in front.
Well, the Japanese got a penalty there, and they will have to slow.
Stand by for a pop in 2, 1, popping. Best pressure's the other side. I think we should go here, guys.
The Australians under the helmsmanship of Tom Slingsby, so experienced, so knowledgeable of these waters, out in front and claiming the victory.
Okay, let's try to build in this one. There we go.
Australia flying.
These boats are so fast.
What a sight. Australia out in front in Sydney. It's how Tom Slingsby would have written it. And it is the Aussies dominating down under.
We improved every race, and that was a really good race for us, our best one yet.
Hello and welcome to SailGP from Sydney Harbour. As you've just seen, yesterday's racing was truly spectacular. But after those 3 races, let's take a look at the leaderboard. Just 1 point separating Japan and Australia at the top of the standings. A little bit of daylight down to Dylan Fletcher and the Great Britain SailGP team. And then 1 point separating United States, China and France. So joining me to pull apart today's action is the silver medalist in the NACRA 17 class from Rio, Lisa Darmanin. Lisa, you spoke to a few of the teams last night when they got off the water. What was the general consensus?
There were a lot of mixed emotions, and pretty much everybody wanted a little bit more wins. So I know the Chinese were extremely disappointed, and some of the sailors were there till 9:30 debriefing. So we'll see who had some good lessons last night.
Okay, well, Shirley Robertson's been out to speak to a couple of the skippers before they dock out.
Tom, just a quick word. I know you're just about to head out. It looks great today. The harbour's full of green and gold, and they're all there for you.
I know, it's pretty amazing. Last day of our first event here at SailGP, and yeah, I can definitely feel the support. Everywhere we walk, we get cheers, so it's pretty cool.
You look a little bit nervous. How are you feeling about the day?
Yeah, it's normal to be a bit nervous, but the feeling is very great because the boat is very nice and we're making a lot of fun with the boat. So I'm very excited to be here.
The final day, it's all about getting in that final 2. What do you think your team can do?
Yeah, I think, if we sail as well as we said yesterday and fix our manoeuvres, there's no reason why we can't be putting pressure on the Aussies and the Japanese and hopefully be able to get into that match race.
A lot of pressure on those skippers right now. We're just a couple of minutes away from racing. But not all team members are picked for their sailing expertise. We've been to meet Australia's own Ironman.
I've sailed my whole life. My grandfather taught me how to sail from a really young age. So for me, it was always more of a hobby outside of my other sports. I turned professional at 14, 15 as an Ironman. I was on the circuit for a very long time. To represent my country, it was a dream come true for me. Both Olympic Games was exceptional. Outside of the individual stuff, I wanted to be a part of something bigger, and that was to be a part of a team. So when I had an opportunity to join one of the biggest sailing teams in the world, man, I would have been crazy not to chase it. I sacrificed everything. I sacrificed my swimming and my Ironman to chase this dream. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I get a real kick out of speed and things that are a little bit dangerous. I kind of tick those 2 boxes with what we have here with this SailGP. We're pretty lucky because we all sailed leading into the last cup together. Slingers on the wheel. There's no one better in the world, really. The guy's a weapon. I got all the confidence in the world, with him. Basically we're putting our lives in his hands effectively. Kyle Langford, What an amazing wing trimmer, and you know, just won the Volvo. Jason Waterhouse, who's our flight controller, he's a silver medalist in Olympic Games. I believe come 2020 he'll win a gold medal. And then in position 2, we've got Sam Newton. He's amazing. Anything to do with on the water, the boat, fitness, he's just the go-to guy. The F50, she's just a machine. We're so lucky to be able to sail it, and you know, I'm really lucky that I'm part of Team Australia.
The technical area for the SailGP teams in Sydney is Cockatoo Island. It's an UNESCO World Heritage listed island, and its colourful history has seen it used as a prison, a dockyard and a school. But this weekend it's where the F50s are being prepped and launched. The boats make their way east from Cockatoo Island under the harbour bridge and down to the sailing area, which actually surrounds us here on Shark Island. So it's another action-packed day here in the sailing area. We've got the 2 final event races, which will rank all 6 teams, and then the top 2 will go toe-to-toe in the final match race, where the first ever SailGP winner will be crowned. So this is the start list. Tom Slingsby skippering Australia, Phil Robertson China, Billy Besson France, Dylan Fletcher Great Britain, Nathan Outridge of Japan currently leading the leaderboard, and Rome Kirby of the United States. This is where we are. Sydney Opera House means that we're in New South Wales on the east coast of Australia. This is the sailing area. There's an exclusion zone there, and then the course is set up within that, a reaching start that leads into upwind and downwind legs. As is always the case with sailing though, you want to know what the weather's doing. And we can see here 10 knots of wind at the moment, but that temperature, 27 degrees, is rising, and that means that the sea breeze is going to kick in, Lisa.
Yeah, Sydney's renowned for their sea breezes. We usually have a bit more wind than this. Very, very similar conditions to yesterday, but we're hoping for a few knots more.
Okay, let's get into the meat of the top 2 teams. Japan and Australia, but they're helmed by 2 old rivals and friends, Nathan Outridge and Tom Slingsby. Nathan sailed beautifully yesterday. What did he do right, in your opinion?
I think Nathan's manoeuvres were just way smoother than the Australian team. He showed his class. He's so comfortable in foiling boats. He's really led the way with foiling, and that just showed yesterday.
Slingsby made a mistake. Well, the whole team potentially made a mistake in that first race, but they recovered and won the last 2 races, and that sends an ominous signal.
Yeah, I did talk to Jason, the flight controller, last night, and he said after the first race, they just said, let's all just focus on our jobs. We know what to do. Let's just do a good job individually, and then we'll come together as a team.
Okay, well, we've got 6 apex predators of the sailing world prowling around in the start area. It's going to be an interesting day.
To race 4 then, and the pre-start, which we're also excited about, so too those out on Shark Island. Big numbers have come in on this glorious Saturday afternoon, and they of course have the best view of everybody. But those starts, Shirley, as we saw yesterday, particularly in races 2 and 3 for the Aussies, absolutely key to their success.
Yes, Ali, you need a good start, you need a good first leg, and you can see we're really close to Shark Island there. Not much room to manoeuvre. And we saw Tom Slingsby yesterday dominate, really control the fleet, and it looks like he's trying to do the same.
Well, there is always a little bit of cat and mouse about this particular element. The metaphorical brawling well underway, 10 seconds till the start. Who's timed it best? Who's going to hit that start line at speed as the clock hits 0? Slingsby on this near side alongside Dylan Fletcher in the British boat. It is the Australians who are out to the fastest start, the best start. Japan on the outside, looking to claw back a little bit of space early on. The USA at the back alongside the French and the Chinese. Nathan Outridge really making it a priority today to make sure that those starts were better. Although he performed brilliantly across the board, with races 1, 2 and 3, the starts were a bit sluggish, and again, Australia off to a flyer.
Tom Slingsby controlled the fleet once again. He knew where he wanted to start, and goodness, he's faster than anyone else. He's got the prime position, and he gets to mark 1 in the lead.
6 boats hurtling across the water, flying machines in all but name, and the Australian boat right out in front at Mark 1. Crucially, the British in behind them, the Japanese in third, but it is all about Australia and their brilliant start to this race. Really beginning day 2 as they left off on day 1. Really good boat speed, consistent foiling, and a consistent breeze to go with it seemingly today, Shirley.
Real crucial point here, but if you get ahead, you get to decide when you want to jibe, and we see the Australians carrying on a little bit further than everyone else, going closer to the boundary before they make that turn, and that should line them up nicely for gate 2.
The Australian team, who have a certain degree of experience there, of course, with Tom Slingsby, Carl Langford, Jason Waterhouse, those the decision makers, if you like, the back 3, those in charge with the greatest amount of responsibility, and they're out in front from the British at the moment. Japanese, they won't be written off at this point, far from it. Such a lot of sailing to go, and they're looking nicely poised, actually. We saw yesterday, didn't we, Shirley, in a straight line particularly, they can be very, very quick.
They are so smooth, Ali, and they're so fast when they get the opportunity. They seem a little bit rusty in their racing skills, slow off the mark at the start line, and always having to play catch-up.
So the Aussies leading the way and hurtling headlong towards this leeward gate, flying at 24, 25 knots of boat speed. The Japanese they favoured that area of the course yesterday, didn't they? They definitely found a little bit of breeze there for the most part in many of the races. But at the moment, well behind the Australians, and at the moment as well, behind the British, crucially.
Great job by the British. I think Dylan Fletcher, who's steering that boat, brand new to this kind of sailing, really got a lot of confidence yesterday, and really punchy this morning, really trying to make it into that top 2.
So Australia heading off upwind, but look at the speed of the British here. They are going another 10 knots beyond the Australians currently as they round the gate. The Japanese choosing to follow Australia. And the British have made an excellent start to this second day. Dylan Fletcher talking about the frustrations yesterday. There he is at the helm. It's a busy old place. It's a wet place too, but interesting to hear him talking, Shirley, about the frustrations of seeing other people yesterday flying at 20, 25 knots, and at points they were stuck in a hole going nowhere.
It could not have been harder for them yesterday, right just on the cusp of whether you could fly or you couldn't. But today, Sydney Harbour has delivered. What a stellar day on the harbour. 10, 12 knots, foiling all the way around.
So the Australians setting the pace, with the British not too far behind, some 150 metres or so. The Japanese are far out to the right-hand side of the course as we look out onto the scene here. Shark Island top right, and they won't want to be getting too close to that, the Japanese. The Australians, you can see, heading across to the outer parts of the course itself.
Increasing here in 3, 2.
Calm and controlled, just like yesterday. He was very frustrated after race 1 yesterday, Tom Slingsby. He didn't use those words. He said he was angry, and they didn't perform, and their boat handling let them down. So he is a motivated man right now.
Get ahead, Ali. It's so much easier. I mean, he has picked the ideal route on this course. A little bit to the right, but came back early, so he didn't get in that wind shadow from Shark Island. And now he's in the lovely fresh breeze on the left-hand side. Beautifully sailed.
My way.
So Slingsby well in front, and his great rival Nathan Outridge with plenty of work to do. He at the moment is trailing the British. The USA probably not too far behind. In fact, the Japanese look to have snuck in front of Great Britain. Out of shot at the moment, but going along nicely. And the British boat speed is strong.
You know, we haven't seen a great deal of foiling tacks at wind. You need to have a boat speed of 25 knots. We're just on the British there, doing 24, 25. So I think as the day progresses, we may well see that.
This the cross from the Japanese, which enabled them to leapfrog them in the leaderboard. Here we are with the Japanese. Nathan Outridge, eyes out. Trying to spot, Shirley, I imagine, those darker patches of water that you were explaining about yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you can hear them talking about it. Yeah, it looks pretty good on the left, and we may well see them tack in soon. Just deciding also which mark they're going to go around, which way they're going to go down that run.
Still everybody trying to chase down Tom Slingsby and the Australians, and they're taking rather a different route here. Shirley, what's in it for them over there? They've obviously spotted something that's going to assist their cause.
We saw the Australians yesterday, real kind of tactical sailing, controlling the fleet, and I think they're just doing the same again. They've been caught up a little bit by the boats behind, and they're positioning well for the next round.
Yeah, the British and the Japanese are definitely beginning to snap at the Australian heels. Good boat speed, but the Australians at the moment, the ones to catch. Nice to see the challenge, though, from the other boats, because yesterday, particularly in the second and the third race, the Australians really had much of it all their own way as they head through that windward gate. First up, in front and bearing away from the Japanese. Still that 1-2-3, Australia, Britain, Japan.
The British team have done well to defend against the Japanese. Japanese sailing fast, but the maneuvers have been good, and I think a few more knots of wind, and it's a lot easier on the boat. They're flying all the time, and nicely sailed by them.
So the British heading one way, the Japanese heading another. And nice to see the Americans not a million miles away either. Here we are on board with the British boat to the right, the Japanese to the left. Again, Australia sailing their own race, and it was instructive to hear Tom Slingsby yesterday, and indeed this morning too, Shirley, talking about the fact that they felt they'd sailed the fleet rather than the wind pressure in race one, where they didn't really perform. Today, determined to hunt down that wind at every available opportunity.
They're fired up. I mean, I think there was an element of nerves early on yesterday, but, you know, got that out of their system and knew, and I think they could see the nerves in other people too, and they knew that they could control that situation.
Nice and sail. We should be running in from here, boys.
Dylan Fletcher, he seems a lot more confident than I think we saw yesterday. You know, he's got a day under his belt. Even in the communications, he's in control of what's going on.
Important not to underestimate as well the ability of all the teams here to analyse the data from yesterday, not just their own, but those of the other boats, the boats doing it better than themselves. So all of those manoeuvres will have been analysed, and that shared intelligence will hopefully lead to better performances from each of the crew. Australia out in front, the British now in second place. The Japanese were very close to the boundary not so long ago, but it is plain sailing at the moment for the Australian team. Untroubled as it stands, and it's just another reinforcement of the message, really, isn't it, Shirley, that start is just so critical.
You have to get round Mark 1 ahead, and then you're a controller of where you go, how fast you go, the angles you sail. It's absolutely crucial.
Very crisp, clean manoeuvring as well as they head upwind once more. The Australians, look how far clear they are of the second place boat, Great Britain.
Well, you can see the right-hand side of the course, Ali, from this lovely aerial. It's just You know, it's not as dark, it's sort of glassy in parts, there's just less wind there. It's danger. If you want to foil around this course, it's danger to go too far in there.
A little light here for the next 10.
Another jibe from the Australians and another glimpse of the choreography of all the different movement that's going on. It all has to be timed so carefully, doesn't it? Great Britain through the leeward gate, and Japan seemingly gaining on them. Their boat speed looks strong at this point, but an excellent rounding of the gate and tearing away Dylan Fletcher. You can be sure that Nathan Outridge will have something up his sleeve on this leg, if not the final one.
Well, he split with the British and gone to the right-hand side, so we'll see how far he goes. I mean, we heard even on the Australian boat on the onboard comms that go too far, the wind decreases, it starts to get a bit light. It's dangerous on that right-hand side.
I think we want to attack in this puff. There's one behind them now. Yeah.
These are the comms from the Japanese boat.
Right,
you can hear they want to attack.
I think we need to set up.
Yeah, Ali, they're itching to go, not just because of the boundary, but because the wind is getting lighter and lighter in there. And they waited for a puff to come to them and then turned the boat.
Well, it is nip and tuck, isn't it? Between second and third, between Britain and Japan at the moment. The French and the Chinese sailing towards that leeward gate. And this cross will be interesting. It looks like the British are going to have to duck in behind. The Japanese are going to steal second place. And that will please Nathan Outridge no end. Battle well and truly joined between Japan and Britain, with the Aussies potentially gone at this point.
I think that really just came down to the smoothness of the manoeuvres. You know, the Japanese sail their boat so well, and it's a bit hit and miss for the British. You know, not quite so smooth, lots of little errors, and I think that's why the Japanese just extended there.
Well, a good 300 or 400 meters between the Australians and the Japanese, the two boats who have dominated here in Sydney Harbour.
You know, the rich get richer. When it's all about speed, you know, get free, sail your own course, lovely fresh wind, you just get further and further ahead.
Able to sail with a degree of not just confidence, but some luxury with that kind of buffer behind them. We have seen big leads diminish quite quickly, but it would need a fairly substantial loss of boat speed from the Australians here for the Japanese to take flight, or indeed the British to apply any more pressure. So this the final windward gate to navigate for the Australians, who have slowed up a good deal.
Not the best tack, but also you could see there it was a bit lighter at the top of the course. It's affected by the land and all the spectator boats that are out today, and I think the combination of that led to a really slow manoeuvre for the Australians.
So you can just see that the hulls are struggling to lift themselves onto the foils and out of the water to reduce the drag. And it's slow going for Australia at the moment. We'll be able to get a look at the Japanese before too long to see exactly how they are progressing. The British, by the way, were perilously close to, if not over, the boundary, but they've not been given a penalty by the umpire, so they're still in the equation for the podium, certainly, if not victory itself. So through that final gate go the Australians, and the Japanese in hot pursuit, but it may be, surely at this stage, it may be a vain pursuit.
I think the Australians they're sailing quite smooth, they're picking their own way to go, and they're a long, long way ahead.
They found some breeze as well on that near side of the course, the Australians, and the Japanese are are going a full 5-6 knots slower than them. The British won't be shaken off. And maybe the best battle out here this afternoon will be between Nathan Outridge and Dylan Fletcher. That battle for second place.
2, 1, made.
Matt Gottrell, the grinder, top left of your screen, a 2-times world rowing champion, Olympic gold in the men's 8.
We heard
so
Dylan
not shy of the muscle, which is required in that role, that's for sure.
We heard Dylan counting in the maneuver. It's split-second accuracy. Who does what when? And if that doesn't happen on time, then it doesn't work well.
And Dylan Fletcher and the British are struggling around that gate just in the way that the Australians did. The Japanese, having taken a different course, have picked up boat speed very effectively. You can see up on the foils in stark contrast to the British. Through that gate and downwind for the final time as our helicam hoves into view.
The Japanese did really well there. They stayed in the pressure from the left-hand side and just managed to sneak round in front of the British. Smooth maneuvers as well. Didn't lose too much speed in that last-minute tack.
I just wonder if that's enough for the Japanese to hold off the challenge of the British. That race not done. This one seemingly not too far away from being resolved. The Australians have been utterly dominant in this opening race of day 2. The experience telling, the start telling. And I think the cleanliness of the manoeuvring too, Shirley, it's abundantly obvious, isn't it? That they, and the Japanese in particular, are manoeuvring in a much cleaner fashion than the rest of the fleet at this early point of SailGP.
I guess these two teams are the most experienced. They've both done America's Cup. They've put in, you know, hundreds of days sailing this kind of boat. But saying that, the other boats are stacked with quality sailors, new generation of sailors who are used to going quickly. And in this format, as you say, they share data. So you can't keep anything a secret. If you've got a secret move, everyone will see it afterwards. And I think we'll see this series close up as it progresses.
What a race they have sailed. The Australians with their 3rd win of the event from 4 races. Tom Slingsby is flying his machine with real panache and a tremendous amount of belief at the moment. Some way clear of the Japanese and the British, so success yet again on Australian waters for the Australian team. Gentle celebrations. They may be ramped up later in the event. The match race not too far away, and it would be hard to see a match race not featuring the Australian boat. In the meantime, the Japanese and the British still going toe-to-toe. Nathan Outridge with his nose in front, hurtling along at 27 knots. Who's going to grab that all-important place? Second place on the podium. It does look like Japan at this stage. Chases on from Dylan Fletcher, but he's up against it now.
I mean, to me, the Japanese look race rusty. You know, they're fast and they're smooth, and that gets them out of trouble, and they've got a bundle of second places, but you know, somehow they need to remember how to race well and you know, attack that start, just as we've seen the Australians do.
So one more jibe might do it for the Japanese. They're on a tight line, but they've done very, very well indeed. And as with races 2 and 3, it's an Australian-Japan 1-2. And Nathan Outridge crosses the line with Dylan Fletcher hot on his heels, and that will really encourage the British team here in Sydney. They've had a testing old time of it, but they've really performed in this first race of the second day. And as they started, they finish. Australia, Japan, Great Britain. That was how they came off the line. That's how they finished the race.
We saw a little smile from Dylan Fletcher. You know, that's his 11th day sailing this boat, and no history of this kind of sailing before. So he's going to be pretty pleased, pretty relieved, and you know he's a great competitor too, and you know he's fired up to do more.
So the interesting nature of the leaderboard now means that the Australians and the Japanese are level at the top. And that battle to be involved in the match race, all important, of course. So the British well pleased with the work that they've done. And the French, the Americans and the Chinese will finish in the last 3 places. Billy Besson, who of everybody here seems to be having the most fun. I think it's clear from his reaction yesterday. He just loved his time out on the water, and another 4th place finish for the French. Slow improvers, I think you would put them down as at the moment. The USA still with plenty of work to do. They really haven't had the best of times. Rome Kirby is almost in danger of missing the gate as he heads through the finish line. A 5th place finish for the USA, and it will be China for the 3rd consecutive race bringing up the rear. So Phil Robertson will be disappointed. They came here with decent expectations, and there is plenty still to do.
Race community, Team Australia, we have our skipper with the interview radio ready to go.
Yeah, Ali,
let's have a word with, sorry Shelley, we'll have a word with Tom Slingsby now after his victory. Tom, again, congratulations. You got off the line clean, and as we saw yesterday, and as you told us yesterday, you've proved extremely hard to catch.
Get that?
Okay. Tom, can you hear me?
No, Tommy just made the comment that they wanted to kind of simplify things on the beat, you know, when on that first beat, when they made some big gains and we got a bit stuck out of the top mark. But Jace was just saying he's struggling to kind of see how much more simple we can make it because we're kind of bouncing off the boundaries. So just
so apologies, we're struggling to make out exactly what Tom is telling us. We'll catch up with him later on, no doubt. Still 1 or 2 gremlins out there on the water. Not the easiest of things to get everything functioning just as we'd like. But Tom Slingsby, no doubt, a very, very happy man with his work here in Sydney. 3 consecutive race wins.
maybe it's worth doing that little tack at the top. Like once the British tack to go left turn, we could have gone with them. I reckon that was the go. Yeah.
Victory then for the Australians, and they are dominating at the moment. We know that there will be a big challenge right to the finish, you suspect, from the Japanese, but look at the way the boat started.
So an emphatic performance from Tom Slingsby and the team in the Australian boat. But lots of promising signs from the British there, Lisa.
Yeah, I think Dylan showed that he knows how to race a sailboat, and probably learned a lot of things last night watching the Japanese and the Australian team.
Okay, joining us for this section of analysis is Jody Shields. Jody, plenty of experience in the boats, and you know Nathan Outridge, the Japanese captain, very well.
Very much so, and Nathan wouldn't like the fact that Tommy just give him a little bit of a lesson there on the water, a minute and a half. You know, they'd be thinking, oh, we've got to get that back, because those boys are very competitive between each other. There's no doubt about that.
Well, it also looks like Dylan Fletcher's starting to get in the mix. Maybe a little bit of finesse required, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on. But it's actually tea and cakes on the boats now between the races. So we can go down and look at a couple of the onboards. We can see this is the British boat now. Dylan Fletcher, Chris Draper. And I imagine there'll be Stuart Bithell in there as well, all debriefing at this point, Lisa.
Yeah, they had the first half of their race was magnificent, but you know, they've really got to find out what the problem is, why their manoeuvres aren't working, and you can see there that the coach is talking them through it. I'd say that they're probably talking about the pressure, where the best pressure is, because it is dying off a little bit here.
Yeah, we saw that yesterday, that it became critical then to stay on the foil, and that actually hurt Great Britain. One man, though, who doesn't appear to be having that problem is Nathan Outridge in the Japanese boat.
Yeah, well, you know, Nathan's one of the best, you know, downhill apparent wind sailors that there is in the world, and that's why he's steering one of these boats. And like Lisa said, it's all about keeping the boat moving. I mean, you can go from 25 knots to 4 knots just from dropping off the wind. So these guys have got a bit on to keep this, keep these boats going.
You can give us a bit of insight into this, because Lisa talks about it. Says Nathan runs one of the most relaxed boats you can imagine, and certainly look how laid back it looks on there at the moment.
Yeah, they're not having beer and pizzas, but they'll be certainly discussing what they can tweak. They'll be getting the fluids back on board, and as you see there, and just discussing. Okay, boys, we got second. Take second every day, but unfortunately, he's that Australian boat in front of him once again for a first. So they'll be starting to get in the back of his mind. I reckon he'd just be starting to thinking, well, this is.
I've got something to prove.
So there we see the Japanese boat just coasting along in between races. What a fascinating first race it was, and the dominance of both Australian skippers, Nathan Outridge and Tom Slingsby, was evident once again. We're joined now by Jody Shields. Jody, you know Nathan pretty well. He sailed that boat beautifully once again.
He did indeed, and one of Nathan's biggest strengths is he doesn't panic. And he's got his left-hand man, which has been with him in a couple of Olympics, in Ian Jensen, we call him Goobs. So he's very comfortable in the boat. And those pair, if they get behind, they can just tick away and tick away and tick away and put themselves back in the second spot. They'll back a little bit deep. They had a few bad jives, but they don't panic, pick the wind, and they get a second.
Well, interestingly with Team Japan, they've been hit and miss on a lot of the starts so far, and we're going to start the analysis today, as customary, at the start line, and there's a lot to pick out here, isn't there? Australia, you had your eyes on, Lisa.
Yeah, I think in these lighter breezes, it is tactically strong to start at the bottom of the line, because you can build your speed. So you can see there, Tom is already the fastest boat, the Australian boat, and they're able to build the speed. The second fastest boat is Japan, but they are at the top of the line. You lose a little bit of control at the top of the line, trying around the first mark. And there you have it, the Australians, they're just off. But it is really notable. Dylan had a fantastic start on the British boat, and his speed increased dramatically.
What was it you said to me earlier? That he may be new to the class, but he certainly knows how to race a boat.
Exactly. Dylan's a fantastic 49er sailor. He's a world champion and an Olympian, and he has raced Nathan a few times.
It feels at the moment, though, like Tom Slingsby is bossing these races from the moment they get in the start.
I think so as well. Tommy's got that pin out of the start, 3 out of the 4 times now, and he's owning it. Dylan done Tommy a little bit of a favour there. He held the rest of the fleet up, which opened the gate for Tommy to pull the trigger, and he went off. So I think Tommy might owe him a beer a little bit later, I reckon.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. The next thing that we can look at is Japan and GBR coming together at the bottom of the downwind mark. And this was a fascinating bit of sailing. The speed that Dylan Fletcher's got out of the boat as he rounds the mark.
I mean, this is a classic manoeuvre. If you can take that mark without having to do a jibe, you take it, you maintain your speed, and you don't have to worry about popping back on the foils again. But Nathan didn't really have a choice there. He had to jibe and take the other gate, otherwise it's just follow the leader.
Okay. Well, the British, they haven't struggled with straight line speed, have they, Jody?
Absolutely not, and the thing is, unfortunately, the conditions aren't sort of helping us do foil jibes and foil tacks. So the whole lot of them, all 6 boats, they haven't had that much time in the boats, all crews. So they're still working out the best way to jibe them, the best way to tack them, especially in these fluffy little bits of breeze. So, they're not slow, they're definitely not slow, and they're only going to get better.
Okay, well, we can take a look at one of those, and it was probably the critical mistake that cost GBR their second place spot against Team Japan. They just sat back and the boat reared up in the middle of this jibe, Lisa.
Yeah, we've seen it happen to a lot of teams, but that's just not calculating the lift of the second board dropping. So as you can see there, a huge amount of pitch, Dylan grabbing on and then running to the other side to try build that speed again. And you know what, you just lose so much speed and really open the door for the Japanese.
Well, they're only 14 seconds behind Australia at that top mark. They split jibes. They get that one bad jibe and end up a minute and a half down the bottom. So it's very critical. You just got to nail it.
Things are moving very, very quickly in F50s.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can take a quick look at the leaderboard now and see exactly where everyone stands after the 4th event race. So Australia out with Japan in front. They have managed to stretch enough of a gap that unless they come right down the pack, Great Britain won't be able to catch them. Things are set up for a dramatic 5th race. Okay, as we've said before, these are the fastest boats in any racing class. They're capable of 90 kilometres an hour, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. We still haven't seen them under full power. But how are these aquatic equivalents of an F-15 fighter jet developed? Let's take a closer look.
No entry, authorised people only. Let's go. We're developing the boats such that they'll be cutting-edge technology. We've got a lot of people working here at Core Builders in New Zealand to rebuild some of the existing boats, create new boats, and also create new components.
A huge amount of man hours has gone into this. A huge amount of people have been involved here, from designing to laminating to fitting out to painting to marketing. It's a monster project.
There's a lot of hand finishing at this point. You can see that they've been sticking these titanium surfaces. The rest of the surface is obviously machined to a very fine tolerance, which of course is very, very important for the performance of the foils. They've got a completely new foil system, a completely new control system, new rudders, a new steering system, new deck layout. This is clearly not a conventional sailboat, you know. You've got the twist grip controls on here, you've got an adjustment on here, you've got two buttons here, which is the rudder differential. This is the jib control, so they've got a lot on.
It's a little bit like a fighter pilot flying his jet, basically. The helmsman has to have very good ability to react to the situations and control the boat.
It's just more refined, boats going faster, cooler to sail, cooler to watch.
It's the next stage again. It's faster, a bit more difficult to control.
When you go on the Formula One, it's exactly the same.
These things are dangerous, and there might be some young teams now who just keep their foot on the accelerator, and you can definitely get bit by these boats.
I think the combination of national teams and very, very high-performance boats racing on short courses, close to shore, I think it's an incredible spectacle to watch.
And we have only seen the very beginning of these boats' potential, but this is the scene here in Sydney Harbour, Shark Island, packed with spectators and fans, and these boats prowling around the outside like caged tigers, waiting for the next race. Race 5. This is going to be very interesting. So, race 5 looms. It's the last of our event races where all 6 boats are on the water at the same time. We already know, 37 points apiece, that it will be, barring some kind of catastrophic... No, actually, the maths doesn't add up. They will be Japan and Australia in the final. Is the strategy going to change between Tom Slingsby and Nathan Outridge?
I think we might see a little bit of a preview to the match race final. I would say with the rivalry that Nathan might try show Tom who's boss, but you know, they don't really need to worry about the other boats anymore. But the wind is dying, it's really patchy, so they are just going to be searching for wind.
Okay, what's interesting is that every single point counts towards the championship. That leaderboard runs through all 5 stops of SailGP. So none of the other boats are going to give up on these races, even though they're not qualified for the match final. So you can see Japan now on our screens. The boys look very, very relaxed considering we're pretty close to the start.
I mean, they have less than 15 minutes in between the races. So it's a quick snack, a quick chat with the coach, and then preparing for the next race.
Okay, so Team Japan making their way into the sailing area behind the start, as are the other 5 teams. It's time now to hand you over to Alistair Eakin and Shirley Robertson in the commentary box.
One final showdown then between the entire fleet before the excitements of the match race. One last time to see all 6 boats tussling in the pre-start. And of course ripping across wind to that first mark alongside each other as well. On board with the Japanese, looking for a response here, Shirley, from Nathan Outridge, having been outdone by his great friend and rival Tom Slingsby in race 1.
Ali, I'm expecting better from the Japanese. And interesting, you know, some of the boats trying to copy the Australian move down on that left-hand side. Chinese well positioned to try and do that. Tommy Slingsby up the other end of the line. We'll see what works.
So who's timing it best? Chinese closest to the line as it stands. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be going fastest as they hit the line. Billy Besson looks to be in pretty good position here, and Nathan Outridge certainly well in front of the Australians, who don't seem to have coordinated this terribly well this time around. The British going at 14 knots of boat speed already. The Australians only 3, but it's the Chinese who are first off the line in front of France and Japan. Nathan Outridge has left Tom Slingsby for dead.
He's also left the British for dead. He shut that door. The British had no rights to come in. And there they are, they're pointing in the opposite direction. Finally, Nathan Outridge has got off the start line in good shape.
Calamity for the British boat, but it is, for once, the Chinese and Phil Robertson who are screaming across the Sydney harbour and up to Mark 1 in first place, with Billy Besson hot on his heels in the French boat. Nathan Outridge in Japan in third place. The Australians trying to pick up speed and managing that, but they are currently in 5th place. The British are out of the picture and surely absolutely dead and buried as far as this race is concerned. China leading from the front. The French, the Japanese, the USA and the Australians all in behind them. And look, poor old Great Britain back there, really struggling across the line, having been edged out and tactically taught something of a lesson, Shirley.
Great start by the Chinese. They copied what Tommy Slingsby's been doing, you know, in every race. Started at the bottom of the pack, controlling the fleet, and got to Mark 1, you know, at top speed, and got there first.
We're on board with the Chinese, top left of your screen. And a performance at the outset here at the very least that will really cheer their supporters. They began the event here so well. Race 1, they finished second behind the Japanese. But here you see the boat speed already of the Australians. The British, you will see on the right-hand side of your screen, this is the start where everything went wrong for them.
Yeah, trimming up.
You know, really punchy for them. You know, they thought there would be a gap and they would accelerate into it right at the end. There was nowhere to go.
So in the meantime, look at that. Look at that boat speed from the Australians. Tom Slingsby, having started really in a poor position, is going at 28 knots, a full 8 knots faster than the Chinese, who've been overtaken, the French too. And once again, the home boat, if you like, has found a way to nose their way in front. The Japanese are well left of our shot as well at the moment. Australia very tight to the Chinese as they head round in a similar direction, heading upwind for the first time. A drag race between these two, and the Australians having to take evasive action, it would appear. All sorts going on here. The Chinese tearing away to the left of the course, Japanese involved in it as well. Interesting decision making from Tom Slingsby, and in the meantime a really good bit of work done here by the USA and Rome Kirby, Shirley.
The Australians could not stay there with the Chinese underneath, and Phil Robertson did a spectacular job, kept his pace on, went round the outside and out the front, so the Australians had no choice but to tack over. We're going to watch it again here.
Here we're seeing the tight rounding of the gate. They were almost on top of the gate itself, and look at the way Phil Robertson's really going after them, isn't he, in the Chinese boat. A veteran of match racing, of course, he loves that one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. And
the Australians got slow here. I mean, they were sitting dark, and Phil just sailed around the outside. Really well executed by the Chinese boat.
Very tight. Very, very tight indeed, and hearts in mouths at various different moments. So the Australians have picked up some wind.
We see them tacking in the dark spots. That's exactly what you want to do. Really help you with that turn.
There'll be a tight cross here between the Australians and the Chinese. It's going to be very, very tight indeed. And you think about the boat speeds of these guys, they're currently up at, what, 16 to 20 knots. The closing speeds, of course, double that, and the potential for fairly hefty damage is pretty obvious. On board with the Chinese top left during that close crossing, and now the manoeuvring to head towards that windward gate.
They tacked in a terrible spot, Ali. They really lost a lot of pace, and you can even see on the water that there's less wind. Just going back to that crossing, all the rights were with the Australian boat. They had the wind coming from the right-hand side into their wing, and they have the right of way.
Dramatic stuff between those two boats, but Tom Slingsby has found himself out in front yet again. But this time around, there is a real old tussle going on behind him between the Chinese, the Americans, and the Japanese, the French involved too. And such is the nature of this particular race that you don't feel Tom Slingsby and the Australians are safe necessarily at this point, whereas in the last race they were well clear by this stage.
Chinese, to me, seem a bit hit and miss on their pace. Sometimes they look all right, and if we just saw them there with the Americans, they're lower angle, not going quite as quickly.
Australia struggling to shake off China. Phil Robertson seems to have the bit between his teeth in this particular race. I would imagine that he's thoroughly fed up after 3 consecutive last place finishes, and we've already spoken about their incredible competitive drive. That will not sit well with Phil Robertson. On board the USA, they've had a rough old time of it as well out here.
Tough event for them, young team, young skipper, and I sort of feel that they need an older head on board just to kind of get them up to speed. And yeah, it's been a tough couple of days for them.
So they're tight to the French, the USA. Australia out in front, Chinese in behind them, the Japanese not too far away, and Britain, of course, still looking to recover from their efforts right at the start of this race.
Yeah, I reckon.
It feels today that the rich get richer. Get out in front, get a bit of space between you and everyone else, and the opportunities are there.
They're doing their absolute level best, China, to get onto the coattails of the Australians. Wind speed just seems to have dropped away a little bit. Australia first through the windward gate.
I think the Chinese will follow them round, Ali. Less manoeuvres, all sorts of light winds on the right-hand side, and they'll just be playing it safe. They'll be delighted if they finish this race in second. They won the start, really commanded that, and doing well here to hang on to the Australians.
There might be a little wave between Tom Slingsby and Nathan Outridge at this point. I would have thought Slingsby potentially thumbing his nose at his great rival, because he's going at a really good lick here, 24 knots of boat speed. The Japanese yet to get through the gate, and it's China who are going to provide the stiffest challenge at this point to the Aussies.
If you're Nathan Outridge, what are you thinking now? It seems like he doesn't have an answer for the Australian team.
Doesn't look that way. The French almost becalmed at the top of the course. Really hobbling their way through the gate. An interesting decision being taken here by the USA. They're going to split the course with Japan and France.
I'll get pulled up.
The French heading off now at a good speed. We've seen their manoeuvring is just a little bit erratic, but in a straight line, they're as quick as anybody out there. Probably not quick enough to catch this lot, though, the Australians. China, the closest challenger. Had a very difficult time of it. 2nd, 6th, 6th, 6th. Phil Robertson and his red rocket, as he likes to call it, needing some extra boosters on at this point, just to try to chase down the Australians.
You know, Ali, often in racing, you might have a week of competition. You know, there's a big build-up to, you know, to the final. But here, it's 2 days. You have to come out and deliver, no questions, and that's a tough format.
So work to do here still to shake off the challenge of the Chinese boat. They're going to head round this this near side of the gate. Amazing the transition that Tom Slingsby seems to have made, Shirley, between that other role that he had with Oracle Team USA at the America's Cup, where he was the tactician, now driving the boat. Very, very different skills required, of course. Lots of them overlapping, but having to negotiate one or two of the boats right out there on the boundary edge, Australia. And the Chinese still trying their level best to catch them up.
Tom Slingsby understood the boat. He's sailing with people he's sailed with before, and I think when we've been watching him in training as well, every day it's got less erratic, it's got much more stable and smooth, and you know, he's saved the best for last.
It's not done yet. You see the one of the hulls splashing down for the Chinese, and of course a big loss of boat speed whenever that happens. You can see that bottom left. The Japanese been left trailing in this race.
Yeah, right. No, 10, Tommy, a little further.
So the Americans and the Japanese heading for a split, the British entering the equation as well, and once more we might be looking further down the fleet for the biggest battle between these boats, the USA and the Japanese. Oh, interesting decision from Nathan Outridge. It didn't seem to be foremost in his mind, that particular operation, but he's turning tight to the gate, and Rome Kirby is locking horns with him. A little bit of instability in the US boat. Shirley, what do you make of that?
You've got to keep it level. I mean, he was trying to do what the Chinese did with the Australians, but didn't execute that well. And when you see the platform hobby horsing around, then you know things aren't good. It is slow.
Here's another look at that. Head to head they go. Rome Kirby and Nathan Outridge here, but the hands are up from Nathan Outridge, and you just see the slightly wild ride that the Americans are on. Tough day yesterday for Rome Kirby. Describe their crew as being all over the place. And it is going to take a lot of learning, but they're learning with every minute that they are on the water. So the Australians still miles out in front, with the Chinese on the far side of the course opposite to them. So we may have a great little contest for that third place between these three, the USA, Japan and Great Britain, who of course had that disastrous beginning.
They've done well to catch up. I think Dylan talked yesterday in the racing about, just staying calm when things don't come your way, and massive lesson learned yesterday, and I think we've seen that today. He's been sailing fast, and they're back in the game.
Didn't seem to be altogether smooth as they tack up wind. Dylan Fletcher with the enormously experienced Draper alongside him. Chris Draper, a couple of America's Cup campaigns, including with the Japanese in 2017.
great view there, didn't we, of how slow you go when you get it wrong.
Might just cost them in that final analysis as they head towards that final leg. What an event this lot are enjoying. Getting better and better, seemingly, Shirley. Phil Robertson, the only one who can trouble Tom Slingsby at this stage. And yet again, so much clear water between the two that you'd think there was a comfortable cushion. Into that final gate for one more downwind leg. Something of a procession on home waters, and goes without saying how delighted they will all be to have put on this kind of show in front of their home crowd. Big numbers on Shark Island today, and so many more boats around the course on the outside, getting a really good view today, Saturday, over and above Friday, quite obviously, but really being treated to a stellar performance. Chinese up against it. What do we think about the wind speed at the moment, Shirley? Quite as fresh as perhaps it was at the outset.
We've got 10 knots at the top of the course, but I think where that gate is, it's just slightly in the wind shadow from that high land behind, and it's tricky up there.
So here we are with those seemingly in the race for third place. The British boat having to duck in behind the French, and again very, very close to the French hulls. Japan wisely staying out of that particular equation. Not for the first time. A maritime battle to savour between Great Britain and France, and just look how close they get. Inches.
It's not easy to judge that.
Japan, and again you see that the wobbling of the British manoeuvring. That's the thing that they're really keen to tighten up on. That's the thing that they have isolated above all else in their quest for improvement in SailGP.
Ali, that is all about time in the water, time with your crew, time with the boat, time for analysis, and that's one thing these younger teams haven't had.
Australia then in total command out here in Sydney Harbour. They have absolutely destroyed the rest of the fleet, left them all clutching at thin air. Tom Slingsby powering across the line for yet another race victory. It has been a quite staggeringly good performance from this crew. Brilliant work, and what a setup. What a setup ahead of the match race, which will decide the winner of this event in its entirety.
Tom Slingsby's a real competitor. Remember, in the 2008 Olympics, he'd won 4 World Championships in a row. He was tipped to win gold, and it all fell apart, and that was a turning point in his career. Came into London, no one could touch him. He's such a fighter.
Well, the Chinese have battled hard, and they've been right up against it through the course of this event, but they have found something here. They found a terrific start, most importantly, but you feel that this should be a performance that will breathe life into the rest of their campaign, one of those that they can look back on certainly with a lot of pride, but also huge encouragement about what they might be able to do moving forwards. A second place finish for Phil Robertson and the Chinese boat, reprising their performance in the opening race of the Sydney SailGP. China in second, in behind the Australians, and a hugely improved performance.
And a massive confidence boost. They've had a really hard few races. We can see them celebrating here. That meant a lot.
It's been a tough old time the last few days. They've been on the end of a bit of a battering. 3 consecutive last place finishes, but out of the doldrums. And the Japanese been left standing by the first 2 boats. The French and the British trying to cause some sort of consternation to Nathan Outridge. They might just have left it a little bit late at this point, so it looks like the Japanese will maintain their record of being on the podium, so to speak, in every single race here in Sydney. Second to the Aussies in race 4, and here a 3rd place finish for Nathan Outridge, and he will know that there is a right old scrap to be had in the match race between himself and Tom Slingsby, between the Japanese and the Australians, but plenty to work on, you suspect, after that particular race where they were left standing. Let's have a word with Tom Slingsby, who of course has led the Australians to yet another win. Tom, I hope you can hear me this time around. Goodness me, you seem to be getting better and better. Utterly dominant today, and of course in races 2 and 3 yesterday. What's your secret?
We had a good start in the first race, we sailed away. That one we didn't have a good start, but we were able to come back through. Jason pulled a really good shift and we got back into the race at the bottom mark, and it was a tight race with China there for a little, but we were able to extend to the finish.
I mean, how much did you feel the heat from the Chinese? Because they've had a tough time of it here in Sydney. How much were you aware of their challenge behind you?
We knew they were there. We were sailing a really good race, I thought, and we couldn't drop them. There was one point there where we fell off the foils and they were right back with us. So they're sailing great. That was a great race by them. They pushed us as hard as anyone has. When we've been leading, we've been hard to catch, and they had a really good race there.
And Tom, can I ask you how happy you are to have left Nathan Outridge behind you in the Japanese boat yet again? There is going to be some tussle, isn't there, in the match race to come?
Sorry, could you repeat?
I was just asking you about the tussle to come in the match race, and exactly how much you're relishing the prospect of going head-to-head, boat on boat with the Japanese and Nathan Outridge.
Yeah, it's going to be tight. I think it's safe to say it's going to come down to the start.
I'm going to bail out. And it looks as if we've lost Tom Slingsby, but I think we get the general idea. He's relishing the prospects of going head-to-head with Nathan Outridge. That will be really one to savour, and it is coming your way very shortly, but another Australian win here on Sydney Harbour.
So once again, Tom Slingsby asserts his dominance on the field here at SailGP in Sydney Harbour. We're joined by Kinley Fowler, America's Cup winner in 2013, and your official title is reserve on the Australian team, but that, I think, does you a disservice. You can slot into almost any position, can't you?
Yeah, pretty easily. No, I've had a bit of experience on boats similar to these in the previous America's Cups, so the intention's always been that if someone goes down, gets injured, or whatever the circumstance, I can just fit right in, whether it be grinding or flight controller or whatever, so yeah.
Okay, you can give us a pretty unique insight into what's been going on the Australian boat. We can take a look here now at the start, do a bit of analysis on it, because you have been, as a team, very, very dominant in this position. But this is probably the first race where you weren't.
Yeah, I mean, you see here China is doing the Tom move. We've seen Tom start at the bottom of the line every time, holding the fleet up, and that's just what happened to the Australians there. They got caught at the top of the line and basically couldn't accelerate.
Yeah, I think the mistake was made pretty early on, probably from about a minute 30 out. We set up too close to the line and too high up to the windward end, so with the fleet pushing down towards the leeward end of the line, we were pretty out of options. We couldn't roll in front and we couldn't get behind everyone, so we were where we were and we had to make the best of it.
Well, as we saw from the pictures there, it didn't go quite as badly as the British team for you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's something that they're going to have nightmares about. I think that's a pretty big mistake, and especially at this level. And you've got to see that coming before it happens.
Especially when there's so much at stake. Every single point in this championship counts at the moment. The next clip we got, though, comes from Australia in 5th place, in the middle of that downwind leg. Suddenly, by the bottom mark, you're into first, or battling for first. That was a phenomenal move. What happened?
Yeah, so in the first race of the series, we saw the reverse happen. We did a jibe and got off the foils, and everyone else got on the foils and rocketed down, and then we came down here below Shark Island and did a really terrible jibe, and that basically put us about half a leg behind. So we learned from those mistakes, and in this race we knew that we had to get out of there quite early because we're towards the back of the pack, and in order to get out early and make it work for you, you have to nail that jibe.
Okay, the stage is set. Just 10 minutes away from the final match race. So Sydney Harbour looking resplendent, looking down over the botanical gardens and the city centre there. Lisa, no surprises seeing Tom Slingsby and Nathan Outridge in the final, but what is it that these guys have? It is one design racing. What is it that they have that's leaving the rest of the pack behind?
Yeah, all the boats are identical and all the systems are the same, but as we've spoken about, there's just so many variables that the teams can change. They can drop the boards at different times and at different speeds, and that's what's the most critical moment. And we really are seeing the people who are new to these boats are just getting it wrong, unfortunately. And the guys that know these boats, they drop the boards at the right time, have nice speed through the jibes, and just run away from the fleet.
What is it, Kinley, about the Australian team? Is it the level of communication? Is it the experience? Because you seem to be a well-oiled machine at the moment.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good backing team with Philippe Presti, who's going through all of the data, and all the data is made available to all of the teams. So there's really no excuses for anyone to be continuing to make mistakes. We look at, say, the Japanese boat, if they're jibing better, which they definitely were yesterday, and we go through every detail of their manoeuvres and we try and copy it. That's what we do when we first hit the water. We try and copy as closely as we can what they're doing, and we take what we like and we leave the rest.
One of the things you picked out, Lisa, about Japan is the fact that in the manoeuvres, the platform is so level.
Yeah, they're just trying to keep the most amount of lift. So some of the other teams are starting to heel over, and that just changes the dynamics under the water.
Yeah, we've said it before and we can say it again. Nathan Outridge always looks so relaxed in between the races. There's never any visible sign of pressure on him, Kinley.
Yeah, I think he's got a couple of beads of sweat running down his forehead right now, especially after that domination by us. I don't think he's going to be satisfied if he wins the start, that he's going to be ahead, because you saw what happened just then. We absolutely smoked them, so we could see something fiery.
In Australian sailing, this is a battle that has raged long and hard. Which side are you going to put your money, Lisa?
Well, they're both gold medalists, but my sailing teammate is on the Australian boat, and I'm from Australia, so who do you think I'm going to back in?
Okay, so I've got two Australian fans here. Kinley, I'm guessing that you back yourselves. Have you done a lot of work? Did you do a lot of preparation for the match final?
We're an experienced team with the match racing. To be honest, most of the preparation's been in the manoeuvres, so we've just got to not completely stuff them up, especially in this breeze strength. If you mess up a foiling jibe, then it can be game over just like that. So that's what we're working on.
That's going to be the big difference, the manoeuvres?
Yeah, we've seen it all weekend. We've seen it, and I think we should see a nice little tussle at the start, and getting round Mark 1 clean. It just lets you sail your own race, sail in clear air, and pick when you get to jibe.
Okay, so we are arriving at the final stage of this first ever SailGP here in Sydney Harbour, and it is a match racing final. Both boats going head to head. If you are not au fait with the cat and mouse of a match race final, let Shirley explain for you. She's got all of the details.
If you've been enjoying the exciting event racing, you're in for a real treat in the final, in the match race. It is boat on boat and nation on nation, like a boxing match or a street fight. I've got a short clip from some of the practice match racing we did earlier in the week, just to give you a flavour of what you can expect. We have here USA versus Australia. The objective is not to get to the start line on time, but to get to the start line ahead of the opposition, and if you can, really slow them down so you get the biggest advantage as you can. The wind is coming from the bottom of the screen, which means Australia is the giveaway boat. They are the boat nearest to the wind, so they have to stay clear. Here's a beautiful shot of Rome Kirby steering up towards the Australian. He can't hit him, but he can push him all the way to the wind, which he does, and then picks his moment to accelerate, go for the line, and just look at the speeds when they come up. There we go, nearly double the speeds of his opposition. Beautifully done by the Americans. Off to a great start.
So that is match racing. The start is everything, but as we heard from Kinley Fowler earlier on, the manoeuvres will be a critical section, especially in winds this temperamental. These are the teams: Tom Slingsby, Carl Langford, Jason Waterhouse in there. So the Japanese team, Nathan Outridge, Ian Jensen, Luke Parkinson, the spine of that team, but they're one of the designated development teams. Leo Takahashi and Yuki Kasatani also joining them, gaining an unprecedented amount of experience coming into this race. In terms of strategy, it's going to be all about the start line. Person leading the points, which is now Australia, have the choice of whether they enter first or second. I'm guessing Australia are going to go in first.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, so I think with first we get the choice of which end we enter the match race. So we're going to be happy to pick the port side. As you could see in Shirley's example there, where we were on starboard and just got absolutely owned by the American team. That's not what we want today. We want to beat them off the line.
Lisa, You've watched Tom sailing through this. You've watched him blocking together these victories. At the moment, do you feel like he has the upper hand here at the moment?
I think it's difficult. I think in a match race scenario, everything changes. That you're not thinking about how to beat 5 other boats. You've just got one boat to worry about, and the wind isn't so critical. The tactics become more important. But the Australian team and the Japanese team, they've done this before in the America's Cup. So we're going to see a lot of skill involved, I think.
It comes down a lot to the tactician, doesn't it? We saw it in the last race when Jason Waterhouse, your helm in the NACRA 17, was actually talking about, he was pushing the boat in second place onto the different end of the mark. He knew where, trying to position the second place boat.
I think what's important to remember is this is stadium racing. The race courses are short, so when they're rounding the top gate, they're already thinking about how to approach the bottom gate. We heard on the onboards, he's like, they're going to have to take the right gate anyway, so they were free to take the left gate. So that sort of forward thinking is going to be pretty critical.
Kinley, you don't think Nathan was playing a game of rope-a-dope in that last race? Is lulling Tom into a false sense of security?
I can tell you right now that port entry is pretty powerful in this match race. So if he was playing a game of rope-a-dope, then that's the dumbest thing he's done all day.
Well, tell it like it really is. Okay, the stage is set. In front of a home crowd, Tom Slingsby can take out the first ever SailGP event. This is a mouth-watering prospect. Sit tight. We have the final coming up right now. And then there were two. We've arrived at this match race, which will be wholly different to what we've seen before here in Sydney. It's something of a shootout for glory between Australia and Japan. They have proved themselves a cut above the rest across 5 separate fleet races. And the important information in the early stages here
Shirley, is that Australia, being the leaders of the leaderboard, have chosen port entry. Just explain why they've done that and what it'll mean.
Well, you get to choose, if you're the leader, you get to choose which side you want to come, and they've done it beautifully here. It's a huge advantage. If you can cross the starboard boat, then that gives you a massive advantage. Very easy to be late on this start, particularly when you're the last boat in, when you're the Japanese boat here. Light winds also in this starting box.
So the tactics here, very different in the pre-start. It is a little bit more like hand-to-hand combat. Obstructing and spoiling your opponent's start, just as significant really as getting off the line clean and of course fast too. Looks like the breeze is up because the boat speeds are very significantly higher than we've seen in the other couple of races that we've had today.
They've gone right down to the boundary at the bottom of the box before they turn. The risk here for the Japanese is that they get too far away. Very easy to be late if you're that boat.
So the Australians are nicely poised at this point. The decision from Nathan Outridge to head indeed to and beyond at the boundary, although there doesn't seem to be a penalty in this situation for them in the pre-start.
Get behind him, he's low and in the water.
40 seconds to go, and look at the boat speed of Nathan Outridge at this point, Shirley. Who's looking the best placed at this stage?
Well, it all depends if they're early or late for the start. To me, it looks like they're slightly early, so the Aussies just trying to lose a bit of pace. Look out for the Japanese trying to hook them, trying to get control.
All about the timing, isn't it? As the clock heads for the 10-second mark, they've got to time it right. They do not want to be incurring a penalty as the countdown clock hits 0. Nathan Outridge in Japan going the faster, but Australia across the line fast, and both of them appear to have got off the line nice and clean. Straight up on the foils, and a wonderful drag race as they reach a crosswind to that first mark. And battle is joined. Great to see them going head-to-head. Great to see them so tight to each other, Shirley.
Well, the Aussies taking the Japanese high. The Japanese boat must keep clear. Great move by the Australians. Really slowed down the opposition. And he gets round Mark 1, first place.
So first blood to Tom Slingsby yet again, and the Australians rounding the mark at high speed. Nathan Outridge fighting back on that outside line. And just the first of many different tactics that we might see here this afternoon in the match race. Speed of thought, clinical execution, all key attributes here. Japanese taking a very different path. The Australians heading off to the near side of the boundary, bottom of your screen.
I think the Aussies really thinking about their approach to that bottom gate, minimising manoeuvres.
On board Japan.
A little bit lighter winds on the left-hand side of the screen. We see the Japanese not going quite as well as the Aussies.
30 knots of boat speed from the Australians, and that might not seem like a big discrepancy, but 4, 5, 6 knots can make a big difference, and already they've developed a 200-meter lead here. Just seems to be reading the conditions so well at the moment. Intuitive, and I guess you'd expect some of that from a guy who grew up and has sailed so much in Sydney Harbour, Tom Slingsby. The manoeuvres cost them a bit of boat speed, enabling the Japanese to close.
Australian team very comfortable in the harbour, but you know, they did so well to get to Mark 1 first. Get there first, then you are controlling the race.
And a split course. All action from the Australians, but not the clinical manoeuvre they would have been hoping for. No rake at all, the call.
Yeah, on the new board, it wasn't in the right position in order to give them lift. So hard to get everything right in these maneuvers, and also they're managing the power that helps them do the maneuvers, that adjusts the boards and the rudders. It could well be that they just lost power during that.
Lost a bit of power. They've also lost a bit of their lead as well. Not too much between them here as the Japanese look to find the wind over on that far side of the course. You were mentioning ahead of the day's sailing, Shirley, the need to try to keep out of the wind shadow of Shark Island, which is top left of your screen, or was just a moment or two ago. Japanese having to get themselves across so they don't get caught in that hole.
I'm sure if the Japanese had got to that gate first, they would have picked the left one, but they've no choice but to split. It's a bit of a danger zone over on the right-hand side of the course there. The Australian boat tacking on the Japanese, really defending, and this is what match racing's about. If you get ahead, it's not about extending your lead necessarily, it's just about finishing first and protecting that first place.
So how much now will Tom Slingsby be looking over at Nathan Outridge and affecting as best he can the spoiling of the Japanese pathway?
Well, if you're not looking at them, you know, a lot, then someone on your boat is. They'll know exactly where they are and what they're doing. It's all about control match racing.
Stand by.
Japanese choosing to tack first. It's deliciously poised, isn't it? Really isn't anything between them at the moment. Tom Slingsby, yes, has the upper hand, but we know how quick the Japanese can go when they're in full flight, when they catch a breeze, and that fire, that competitive fire, driving them forwards.
Very calm on the Australian boat. They didn't just tack to cover the opposition. They waited until they were in a little bit more wind pressure, till the platform was absolutely solid, before they crossed and covered.
Big lift and pressure coming up. Copy. Happy to continue, Tommy.
So again, you see the Japanese speed slowing right up as they tack. The Australians still have to do that. Now building into it again, but Australia in command as it stands. And another brilliant example of the rivalry that's been built over many, many years between these two helmsmen. Slingsby and Outridge first going up against each other at the age of around about 15.
The Aussies really sailing the harbour conditions. Like, they carried on, they didn't cover. They saw that puff on the right-hand side that we can see from the helicopter shot, and comfortable to do that. Really, I guess, love sailing here, know it inside out.
Japan with it all to do.
Big gain here. You heard it from Tommy Slingsby. Be happy with that.
Pressure looks good all the way.
Total focus.
It's so insightful to hear the chat on board, Ali. You know, pressure all the way, comfortable here, great pressure, good angle. You know, they're relaxed and calm, and they know they're in command here in this race.
Yeah, it's all positivity coming off the Australian boat at the moment, and why wouldn't it be? They're beginning to tear across the water as well, building on their lead. Keeping the Japanese just where they want them at the moment.
Very low on pitch. Yeah. No function. I've lost it. I think that's why my ball wasn't coming up in that case. Identify that stuff back.
Slowly but surely sapping the belief, most likely, from Nathan Outridge, from his wing trimmer Ian Jensen, his flight controller Luke Parkinson, all of whom were part of the Artemis Challenge in the America's Cup in Bermuda.
Yeah, getting light. And then we're going to get a letdown, Joe.
350 metres to make up.
We could hear in the Australian boat they were talking about oil. That's is pumping hydraulic oil to control the foil positions and the up and down. and they were managing that. They were struggling to have enough oil, and we know that the Japanese, the previous race, were struggling to manage the power as well. So perhaps they've got some issues.
Good recovery, good recovery. Coming in far. Low on rake, just so you know.
Tight to the boundary, Nathan Outridge. And he's been chasing this Aussie boat for the bulk of their time here in Sydney. There is the lead boat, the commanding boat, the Australian boat. 34 knots of boat speed in light air.
10 knots of wind, 30 knots of boat speed.
Just a little snapshot of what they're capable. And when the wind really does get up, we're going to see some high-octane racing, that is for sure.
You're right.
So Shirley, you're Nathan Outridge, you're a long way behind, you're running out of time. What do you do?
Well, I guess traditionally, you know, you split, but there's a massive distance between these two boats now. Very much running out of options.
Probably not with quite the same amount of time on the water, the Japanese, over and above the Australians. I think, were a little hamstrung early on, weren't they? Nathan Outridge talking only a couple of days ago about the fact they, as a team, not really been able to get more than around about 5 or 6 days out there.
Also for the boat as well, it was the last boat to be launched, and I know sea trials have been quite limited on the Japanese boat, so perhaps, you know, not up to 100%.
Yeah.
Tom Slingsby said before that start it would all be about the start of the race, and actually he inched ahead, just ahead of the Japanese, and that was enough to get him to the Mark 1 in prime spot, and he's just monopolised that ever since.
Bit of a header here. No rudder swap.
Enjoying that monopoly, really enjoying the monopoly. Okay.
So we'll probably be able to make one and in right. It's good pressure the whole way here. Yeah, pressing. Okay, pressing hard and then to build.
More chat from Tom Slingsby on board Australia, recognising that they're moving into a decent area of wind. The Japanese moving at a good old pace at the moment as well. It's not absolutely done, they have closed.
No, that is true. These guys know how to make these boats fly. They're consistently quick.
Just one leg to go after this upwind leg. And Slingsby holding all the aces, seemingly. That wonderful setting, fabulous skyline, remarkable venue to launch this fantastic, exciting new event. Is it written in the stars? It might be. The Australians enjoying their time in Sydney, and Nathan Outridge, himself an Aussie,
Yeah, we can go for it.
desperately trying to find an edge.
He'll be on the same line, probably.
There again, interesting to hear the comms on board the Australian boat, Shirley. That they may have this big buffer, but they are always consumed by what the Japanese are up to.
Yeah, you can't take your eye off them for a second, and especially in fast boats like this, you can go a couple of knots quicker, and they're right back in the game. And we heard from the onboard audio, you know, they're probably gonna take our line. They're trying to judge what the opposition are doing and making sure that they stay safe.
Turning.
Through the windward gate and downwind for the final time. Australia seemingly on the victory charge. The hope, the belief ebbing away from the Japanese crew at this point in time. Surely Tom Slingsby can't throw it away from here.
Japanese also, they just got some bad wind. The wind went right, and they had to tack. They didn't lay that mark, and yeah, another costly manoeuvre.
Another costly manoeuvre, another big gain for the Australians, who are tearing along again. We'll follow the theme of the event here, that's for sure. Race one, the only one in which the Australians have got themselves in a mess, finishing fourth. And that fury, that rage that Tom Slingsby was talking about has really provided the fire, the fuel, hasn't it, for the remainder of the event. Really upset at their boat handling and the way they operated in that first race, but what a response it has been, utterly emphatic.
What did he say? You don't want to see me angry. And he was angry with himself, frustrated with himself after that first race. He knew he could perform better, and I think that was the jolt they needed to get into the right gear.
Stretching well clear, and maybe, just maybe now, able to relax and enjoy the final run-in. Maybe that moment won't come until they actually cross the line, until the deed is done.
It's never over until the finish line, Ali. But they've positioned themselves beautifully. Look at the pressure on the right-hand side, the dark area on the water. Great speed as they approach this finish.
Well, it's been a remarkable display. It really has. So calm, so composed, and really very much in control. Tom Slingsby, his fairy tale is complete, and fittingly, the colours of this inaugural SailGP in Sydney are green and gold. Australia the winners. Slingsby holds off his rival, and they will head to San Francisco on top of the leaderboard. And just look at the celebrations, the relief and the excitement of what they've achieved now. Fully a reality. Amazing job, and a relentless one. So much so that for all the talent on board the Japanese boat, they have been comfortably beaten. And Nathan Outridge and the Japanese have to settle for second place, fully in the knowledge that there is a lot of work to be done to catch these Australians, this all-Australian crew, as they head to the next event in San Francisco and beyond to New York, to Cowes, and of course to Marseille for the big prize, the $1 million prize on offer in September. Thumbs up for Australia. Still the clenched fist, and now the rest of the team, of course, the backroom staff, of which there are plenty. It's an operation that requires an awful lot of assistance behind the scenes. Surely we focus quite naturally on the sailors themselves, but all those involved in this campaign will be absolutely delighted with the way that they've launched it.
It's a massive team effort. I mean, these boats are fragile. They're complex, there's electronics, hydraulics, there's all kinds of things going on. It needs an army of people to make sure you don't have a breakdown, and the Australian boat stayed in one piece throughout of this. Also, you know, mention for the coach, Philip Presti. He came from Oracle, he's been with Tommy Slingsby, you know, and all the boys, you know, throughout their America's Cup campaigns, and it was absolutely the first phone call I think Tommy made before this would happen.
So the celebration's only really just beginning. I'm sure they will continue long into the night in Sydney. And they won't be shy of supporters on land who will be dipping into their pockets to buy them a drink. It really has been a remarkable effort. And so we have confirmation now of the results of our match race here in the inaugural SailGP event in Sydney. Australia, helmed by Tom Slingsby, victorious over Japan and Nathan Outridge. So the result lending the Australians an extra point, just the one extra point, but it allows them to sit on top of the leaderboard with 48 points as they head to San Francisco. Japan and Nathan Outridge 3 points behind. The British will be, I think, relatively pleased with the way that they've gone about their business here, a consistent effort and always improving through the course of the event. The Chinese under Phil Robertson coming good in race 5, and the US and the French with plenty to think about, but lots and lots of lessons will have been learnt, and they'll be brought to bear over the course of the next few events. Australia, though, victorious.
Well, Australia can celebrate very nearly perfect record at the first ever SailGP event here in Sydney Harbour. Joined now by Kinley Fowler, one of the Australian team. Kinley, 5 races from 6, including the match race. That is an incredible record.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a bit to work on for the next event. Try and get that 6 out of 6, but yeah, pretty happy with that. It's a good result.
What happened in that first race? You dropped the first race. It was uncharacteristic. It wasn't in keeping with anything we'd seen in the build-up to the race. So what did you check? What went wrong and what did you change?
Look, these boats are so complex to sail. I'm not going to make excuses for the guys, but they made mistakes in 2 jibes at the beginning of the race, and that put them behind. And when you're behind, you've really got to fight to get through the fleet. So, you know, that was it. Two bad jibes and you're done.
Okay, well, that was the first race. Your fortunes changed massively. You arrived in the match racing final with the lead, and we can take a look at the start now. This was very, very cat and mouse to start with, but Tom dominated.
Still want to be able to get behind him. He's low and in the water.
So with 45 seconds out, what's going on here, Kinley?
Yeah, so this is all, when you're going away from the line, as the port entry boat, so Team Australia in this one, you're really picking your time to go back to the line. And, you know, here we've got a little bit of time to kill, so they're just going to come up now, close that gap between Japan and Australia, and then they'll swing down again because they want the leeward end of the line. Once Japan is locked to windward of them here, they come up, set the boat up, ready to hit the line at full speed.
There was a moment there where Nathan fainted down for the bottom end of the line, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's all that is to push us closer to the line so we have a worse acceleration. So if he was to do that a little bit earlier, it would suggest that he wanted the leeward end of the line as well. But because he did it so late, all he's trying to do is push us close and make us accelerate badly.
Yeah, and then we saw the classic silverback move when you're out in front, just pushing Nathan right up to windward and killing all of his speed.
Yeah, that's right. When you get to around the mark here, so now their downwind course is past the mark, so happy to put him up to windward as much as possible and then get a really good acceleration downwind.
And from that moment onwards, Nathan's just chasing. Tom's in control of the race.
Yeah, that's right. We saw it's pretty easy to extend your lead in that kind of stuff because you can reduce your amount of manoeuvres upwind and make them do extra manoeuvres, which is what Jason Waterhouse did a really good job of doing.
Okay, fantastic match race to finish today's action. So it was a scintillating race to finish things off there, but Tom Slingsby in control. It was beautiful control of that race from Tom. He looked so comfortable throughout, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he does a pretty good job of looking relaxed, but I don't think there was any moment there when he was fully comfortable because, you know, the Japanese guys, to their credit, have been sailing really well. So if we made a mistake, they were going to be all over us again.
It was, we've got Shirley Robertson stood just here. Shirley, do you want to come and join us? You watched that race from the commentary box. It was, would you go as far as saying a masterclass from Tom?
It was pretty clinical, wasn't it? I mean, he said how important the start was, and Nathan did a really good job. I mean, they were nearly equal on that start line, but he just had the edge and got to Mark 1 in the lead. And from there, you know, it really was a masterclass. He didn't give anything away. And it's so interesting to listen to the comms. I know you're used to it, but very calm, very considered. I mean, you could tell these guys have sailed together a lot in high-pressure situations, and it was a joy to hear that.
Well, you could see we've got a little bit of footage now of just how much of a lead Tom stretched out on that downwind leg. Very, very impressive. From that initial moment where he'd pushed Nathan up to windward, and then he just stretched out this huge lead. So
yeah, nice when you can get it.
yeah, and he gets that mark rounding from the perfect angle.
I think if you're first at Mark 1, you get to decide, you know, where you go, when you jibe, how you line up to go round through the gates. It's so crucial, and if you're just a little bit behind, you're so on the back foot. You know, the opposition's making decisions for you. So, you know, Tommy really, he had the control of this race, and there was no unforced errors. I mean, everything seemed so smooth.
Yeah, I mean, they actually came fairly close on this upwind to making a mistake. They had a tack out here just below Shark Island where the board was let up too early, which dropped Team Australia off the foils and gave Japan a little bit of a sniff back in, but not enough.
We can actually work on it. Still lots to work on.
We can actually have a look at that, because just moments before, Nathan had made a really good, not quite foiling, but still a very fast tack. So it was quite a close, nervous moment. I could see the stress written on your face, I think, Kinley.
No stress, no stress.
Okay, I think, have we got it there? No, that's the chase boat watching the Australian boys. I mean, we talked about it. The relief there was visible when the Australian team crossed the line. It was absolutely magic. The boys, it meant the world to them, and especially on home turf. Was there an element of pressure in that first, when the mistakes were made in the first race? Could you feel the pressure then?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we came out here on Sydney Harbour with literally hundreds, thousands of people out here watching, which is pretty incredible for a sailing race. And, you know, we've been full on since we got here with all of the home crowd wanting a piece of the action. So there's definitely a build-up of pressure, and I'm just happy that the boys made the mistakes early and got that out of their system and moved on.
Okay, well, we can see Tom Slingsby and Carl Langford making their way up the road there, and the rest of the team. They're on Shark Island with us. Prize giving will be taking place very, very shortly. I mean, it raises the profile of sailing in Australia, I imagine.
Oh, for sure. Without a doubt, this has got to be the best thing to happen on Sydney Harbour, I reckon. The good thing about this harbour is we get the Sydney to Hobart every year, which is another one where you get thousands of boats out there, but to see these foiling cats blasting around in not much wind at all, I would challenge anyone to pick a sailing boat that's going to have an exciting race in these winds. And what's that? Yeah, that was just awesome watching.
Okay, we can see the boys now making their way down to the stage at the front here, and the crowd really starting to cheer them in. This home victory means the world to them. The flags are out.
They're not stopping off for a few beers, are they? I hope not.
The Australian sporting fan, I mean, they get it, don't they? They understand sport. You know, they understand sailing here in Sydney. What a cheer.
So the team make their way down to the front of the stage here, to the joy and appreciation of all of the fans on Shark Island. You can see just how much this win means to everyone here. And the smiles on all of their faces. A great bit of evidence of just how much this means. They're calling Kinley in. Go and join them.
I'm going to have to leave you guys to it.
Well done.
So, Kinley Fowler, an integral part of that team, joins the squad. Jason Waterhouse, Sam Newton, Carl Langford, Kinley Fowler there, and of course, the skipper, Tom Slingsby. So in Kinley's place, we've got Lisa Darmanin back with us. Lisa, you were out on the rib there chasing the boat down. What was the atmosphere like on board the Australian F50?
Well, we were watching the coach, Philip Presti, and, you know, he was taking selfies. He was just so excited. And I think the Australian team just showed that they really wanted to win this race.
Okay, well, we've got confirmation that the boys are going to make their way to the stage for the prize giving. So we'll leave you with that prize giving now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the prize giving for Sydney SailGP. Please welcome to the stage our presentation party, John Bertrand, America's Cup winning skipper of Australia 2, and one of Australia's most promising youth sailors, Natasha Bryant, who last year was the youngest sailor to qualify Australia for the Olympics. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after 2 days of the most exhilarating action here in Sydney Harbour, we have our very first Sydney SailGP champions. So please give a warm welcome to the crew of Australia SailGP team, our grinder, Sam Newton. Our other grinder, Kai Hurst. Our flight controller, Jason Waterhouse. Our wing trimmer, Kyle Langford. And of course, our skipper, Tom Slingsby. I would now like to invite John Bertrand to present the medals to our winning crew, Australia SailGP team. Ladies and gentlemen, before we pop the champagne, please stand for the national anthem of Australia. SailGP team.
Slingsby. Thousands came out in the harbour, Tom, to watch you. Thousands at home watching, and a great crowd here. What did that feel like to finally win here in Sydney Harbour?
It's unbelievable for me. As I've said in previous interviews, this is the first time I've represented Australia since the London Olympics, and I'm stoked to get the same result.
You put on a masterclass. You were untouchable. Why were you and your team so good here?
I think we don't take losing lightly, and that first race really shot us into gear, and I expect a lot of myself, I expect a lot of these guys, and these guys delivered today, and I'm happy to say I delivered, and yeah, we got the win and we won 3 races straight. It's amazing.
It was amazing. It was great to watch. Also, what kind of indication does that give us for the rest of this?
It's hard to know. Every team's going to improve a lot, but as I said, I've said a few times in interviews, I'm saying that if we do what we know we can, they're not going to catch us. So it's out of our rivals' hands, I think, and it's in our hands, and we just got to keep performing.
Well done. It was a pleasure to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, the Australian team.
The experience tells for Australia, so let's take a look at the leaderboard. They're out in front, 3 points clear of Nathan Outteridge and Japan. Dylan Fletcher's Great Britain in third, China, France and the United States playing catch-up. But I am very happy to say that Lisa Darmanen's crystal ball is intact. She didn't say it on camera, but she did call 5 from 6. This is how the rest of the schedule lines up, though. San Francisco, then we move east to the Big Apple, across the pond to Cowes, and then it is the $1 million finale in Marseille, France. That crystal ball, Lisa, you called 5 wins from 6. That's exactly what Australia got.
Look, it was a pretty bold call, but I figured they have all the pressure on them in the world. My little bet wasn't going to change it, but yeah, they outsailed the fleet.
Yeah, it was a truly dominant performance from Tom Slingsby. And it's been an incredible 2 days of racing. The first time we've seen the fastest class of racing boats out on the water 6 up. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have here in Sydney Harbour. We'll see you next time in San Francisco.